What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and here we are with one of my absolute favorite video series that we do every single month. And this is where we look at the actual cards that have changed hands the most on TCG Player in the previous month. Now, this list has taken many shapes and forms over the last, I don't know, we've been doing it for like 14 months now, and it's always interesting to see the cards that are on here. Sometimes we see a bunch of cards that are driven by playability, right? We've seen Battle VIP Pass, we've seen Forest Seal Stone, we've seen regular Ionos on here. It goes on and on and on and on and on. But on a month like this, when we see a list that is absolutely dominated by some big collectibles, some big investment grade type cards, I get all kinds of excited because when I'm thinking about the strength and, you know, the ability for the hobby to withstand everything that's going on, when I see that people are still buying a lot of these big dollar cards in high velocity, it just lets me think that there's a whole lot of people out there who are still really, really bullish on the Pokemon market, just like you are and I am as well. So that gets me all kinds of excited. Now, as I said, we've been doing this list for a long time, and when I pulled this one together, I went back and I looked at the list from 1 year ago, and guess what? There are 3 cards that are on the list today that were actually on the list 1 year ago, and the number 1 card today is actually the exact same number 1 card from a year ago. So when we get to that number 1 slide, I'm going to show you the way the graphs look today, and then I'm also going to show you the graphs from last year because it's really cool how to see these cards have moved over 365 days, gap. It's really cool to see how they were performing last year at this point, and it's really, really interesting to see how they're performing this year at this point. Now, not only do we talk about the individual cards, but I have this really cool system here, or at least I think it's really cool, where I'm going to show you the booster box or ETB that it comes from, right? Obviously, Pokemon 151 is going to be on this list. It doesn't have an doesn't have a booster box, but it comes from an ETB. And then I also have this star system, okay? So the star system simply shows you how many months in a row a card has been on this list because I think that's really important and relevant. So if it's on the list for 3 months in a row and then it falls off, no continuation, it starts over from scratch. So we're going to see some cards that have been on here a lot, and we're going to see some newcomers on this list. So hey, we do this all the time. As I said, we've been doing this for a while, and the cool thing about this channel is I always try and parlay, I always try and tie in previous results or previous graphs or previous trends that we've noticed to the present. And so if that kind of stuff gets you excited, hit that subscribe button. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. And as always, if you like what you see, give us a big old thumbs up. So whenever I do this video, I always start off with what fell off from last month because I think that's really relevant, okay? Now, a surprise to me was the number 1 card from last month actually fell off the list, and that's the Charizard EX from 151. And you could have I could have bet anything in the world on this, and I would not have thought that that would be the card that fell off. I would have picked the other 9 cards 10 times out of 10 before I went and picked this one. But again, 151, there is no shortage of 151 product out there, right? And this is the big chase card, and I do think this will be back on the list again. So not a big deal that it's off, but I was very surprised to see it fell off, right? And then the big Roaring Moon chase card from Paradox Rift, that one fell off the list. And then the Charmander from 151. Now, I don't want anybody to think that this is an indication that 151 isn't going to be robustly represented throughout this video because, spoiler alert, 4 of the 10 cards are still from 151. I think we're just starting to see that people may be getting their fill of the Charizard lineup, right? Charizard's falling off, Charmander's falling off. We'll just have to wait to see, but they also have kind of that strength and that wherewithal that I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see them pop back on next month or the month after, or they start to get hot and form a trend here again. So coming in at number 10, speaking of 151, and speaking of cards that I absolutely love, this Squirtle card right here has a very special place in my heart. I love the artwork. My daughter is a huge Squirtle fan. Her birthday's coming up. I'm going to be buying this for her. I'm not sure if I'll buy it in a PSA 10 slab or not because that goes against every fiber of my being. I like to wait a long time to buy them, but it's her birthday and I'll do anything for her. So we shall see. One of the things that I really love about this card is look at the price. Like usually we see any kind of card when it comes out, right? It starts high and then it starts to work its way down. This one did the complete opposite, right? It started off in the $12 range, shot right up into the $20 range, and it has been slowly climbing. The other thing that's really exciting about these 151 cards as we start to look at them, now that they're starting to get some age to them, these graphs start to smooth out a little bit, right? So instead of having these really jagged ups and downs, we're starting to see the price line smooth out a little bit, which is just really, really cool. And then on the left, I have the Pokemon Center exclusive ETB for 151, and as you can see, pre-launch it was all the way up in the 160 range, then it came out and it was over $100, right? And then it had a small restock and it knocked it down just a peg or two, and it's sitting there at a market value of $96 right now. I absolutely love that. I think that is going to be an incredible buy and hold. So I'm not saying go out and buy it for $100, but I am saying if you have it in your collection, I think you are going to be very well rewarded long into the future. Now, the next card we're looking at right here For me, this is one of my top 3 cards from the Sword and Shield era, and I'm going to tell you right now, all 3 of those top 3 cards that I'm in love with are featured on the list this month. Again, this is just an absolute fire list, and I'm so incredibly excited to talk about all of these amazing pieces of artwork and just awesome Pokemon cards in general. This Gengar from Fusion Strike, like, I think this card is just, it's insane. I love the artwork. You know, the other day we did a video where we looked at all of the chase cards from the Sword and Shield era. We looked at their PSA 10 population, we looked at their overall gem rate, we looked at their price, we did a whole bunch of things. And this Gengar card was actually on the favorable side of all of that. So coming in raw at $209, yeah, that's a lot of money for a raw card, but guess what? Fusion Strike just flipped to out of stock on the Pokemon Center. So as you can see in the booster box graph there on the left, it flipped to out of stock. Everybody FOMOs, it shoots way up, like up to $165. Then those who are FOMO and kind of get their fill, and you see it drops down a little bit, and now it's kind of settled in the 160 range. And I don't think this is going to just absolutely rocket ship up into the right. Like, that's not healthy, that's not organic, right? That's just kind of market and people freaking out over it. So I'm happy to see that it's starting to flatten out. I would not be upset if it stays flat here for a while, and I would be excited just to see it slowly grow over time, like I hope it does, right? I want healthy growth, I want organic growth, and I want growth that is sustainable. So I'm very excited to see not only what Fusion Strike booster boxes do now that it's sold out, but to see how that kind of I don't know, exclusivity or rarity now flows through to the single cards, especially since this is one of the top cards from the Sword and Shield era. Now, the next card right here coming in at number 8, Zapdos just will not go away. 4 months in a row on this list. It is just a stunner of a card. Everybody seems to love it. Now, what's interesting is, you know, different than the Squirtle that we looked at earlier, this one started off at the $50 range, and it has been working its way down. Now, you see in January, right, earlier this year, it hit that $35 mark, and then it bounced right back up. Well, now the market price again is at $35. So the question is it going to snap back up? You see, if you look at that blue line right there, it's starting to flatten out just a little bit. So I love it when cards, even though it's early on in the life cycle of 151, I love it when cards start to form these kind of support lines. And I talk about it a lot when we do these videos because, hey, listen, this might just be a $35 card. The market might just deem this is a $35 card, right? If it drops down into the lower $30 range, people will buy it because they think in the long run it will absolutely grow in price because 151 is such an epic set. So for me, love seeing this card on this list. I love the fact that it's been on here 4 months in a row. I think that shows that a lot of people love it as well. It's going to be really interesting to see if it can hold that line at $35. Now, coming in at number 7, the king is back, the Lugia card. If you've been watching this channel for any period of time, you know this Lugia card was an absolute staple on this list in the early days. It was on here for 9 consecutive months until finally in October of 2023, it fell off the list, but here it is again. Now, what are we seeing? Look at it. When you look at that singles card graph right there, it is starting to flatten out a little bit. Really from October of 2023 when it dipped down, it has started to flatten out. And then it took a little bit of a tumble in January of 24 and it's worked its way back up and it's starting to flatten itself out again. So there's going to be a price that is just so low for this that the market is going to absorb it. Just like I was talking about with that Zapdos card at the $35 price point. So this Lugia might be in the 110 range. It might be in the 120 range. I'm not sure what that is yet. We'll have to continue to watch it. But I do know that enough people are absolutely in love with this stunner of a card from Silver Tempest, and I've said it a million times, like I think Silver Tempest just had a rough go of things, right? From the time it was launched, it was in the middle of the Pokemon pop and flop, and then the market started an overall downturn. Like I think this whole set as a whole has just been beaten up quite a bit, and so this Lugia card, it'll be very interesting to see how it performs now that the market is starting to settle just a little bit, right? So it's going to be cool to watch this card moving forward, and I certainly know that there is a ton of investor and collector love for this one because it's been all over this list for the last, I don't know, 14 months. Now, next one right here, the new king of the list, right? I told you that Lugia was the king for the longest time, but this Charizard EX from Obsidian Flames has been on here for 6 months in a row, and that is not a trivial feat, right? That just is, that's amazing. It really is. No matter what's going on in the hobby, as I said, sometimes we have playability cards that pop on here. We see cards rotate in and out all the time, but throughout the last 6 months, this Charizard EX has been on here, and that is really, really cool. Now, what is interesting to me and what I'm starting to get excited about is this card is beginning to form what I think is a little bit of a support line there right in the $50 range. Now, again, as I've said like 3 times already in this video, the market might just determine that, hey, this is a $50-ish card. Maybe it's going to settle in the high 40s, low 50s. We'll just have to see. But it seems like over the last couple months, it has been being steady right there in that high 40, low $50 range. And maybe that's where it'll settle for a while. I don't know. There's still a ton of Obsidian Flames out there to open, right? And booster boxes sure aren't expensive. When you look at the booster box price down there, it's at $107 for a market market price, and you and I both know that we can find it for much cheaper than that. So lots of Obsidian Flames left to be open, but hey, sometimes even though the supply is great, it doesn't matter, because a card like this, people might be thinking, listen, this is a $75 card in the future. It might be 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever. People might be thinking, hey, at some point this is going to be a $75 card, so if I can buy it in the high 40s, low 50s, I might have to sit on it for a while, but it's a really safe investment. I feel like the downside is already baked in, and I do feel like there's some upside potential. I don't know, as I just said, I think there's a lot more to open. Maybe it'll break that support line, but we could be seeing that, and it could be settling in at the $50 range. We will figure out next month. Now, next one right here, guess what? We got back-to-back 151 cards on here, and no surprise, this Venusaur EX, right? This one has been on here 2 consecutive months, and what I love about this, again, the price is up over where it started, right? When it came out, it was right in the $38 range. Now it's sitting at the $42 range. Like, we've seen times where it's gone really high up, we've seen it plummet back down, but at the end of the day, the market seems to love this card. Every time it comes for sale, people are just buying it up, and one of the things that I really like about these Scarlet and Violet cards is they're just, it seems like the art has the ability to transcend. We've seen a lot of retro sets, we've seen a lot of ones, you know, that are nostalgic, and it seems like the art is just repetitive. And one of the things that I loved about 151 very, very early on was the art is unique, right? These cards are absolute stunners. So if anything has the ability to maintain this kind of price strength, you know what I mean, and price wherewithal, I think these 151 cards have a really good shot at it. Now, I guess, as I said, back-to-back 151 cards, and without even looking at the rest of the list, spoiler alert, 4 of the 10 on here are 151. And it's really interesting to me. As I said, I don't know what I can say that hasn't already been said about it, but it, you know, 151 cards being able to hold on their price levels, I do think is going to be a big product of how much 151 is kind of influxed into the market over the next year, right? Like, again, sometimes we forget 151's only been around for 6 months. In the world of Pokemon, it is an absolute infant. And if anybody can overprint a product, it is the Pokemon company. But it does seem to me that no matter what, no matter how much of they're printing right now, the market is just absorbing it and sucking it up with smiles on their face, because the prices are remaining really consistent. And again, look at that artwork. Look at that Blastoise card. Like, that thing is absolute fire, right? It's just beyond words. Like, it is so cool. It's such a cool set, and I think we're all so fortunate to have been here when 151 came out and to be able to enjoy this awesome time in the hobby that 151 is bestowing upon us. So now, getting into the number 3 card here. Here's another card that was on this list exactly 1 year ago, and another card on this list that, you know, I am absolutely in love with, this Giratina. And as I said earlier, we did a comparison on all of the Sword and Shield chase cards in PSA 10 holders. Gosh, I think it was early last week. I don't know, maybe it was 4 or 5 days ago even. My videos kind of run together. But this Giratina absolutely leapt off the page at me, right? There is less than 3,000 PSA 10s of these in the population. And when we looked at it, the actual gem rate, so the total number that are sent to PSA, only 48% of them resulted in this in a PSA 10 holder, which out of all of the other chase cards, we looked at that Lugia card, like we looked at the Moonbreon, we looked at every single big chase card in Sword and Shield we looked at, this Giratina had the lowest PSA 10 gem rate, and that is incredibly important, right? Because I think in the long run, that is going to drive a lot of value and a lot of excitement and a lot of desire for the raw card, because at the end of the day, we're all hoping, we're all dreaming, even though it's probably not going to happen, that we're going to buy this card raw and send it in, and it's going to get a PSA 10. So when you see this price graph, it was all the way up at $340, you know, a year ago, and now it is all the way down to $261. Like, I know Lost Origin's still available on the Pokemon Center, but I feel really, really strongly that this is going to flip to sold out pretty soon, because the booster box prices on the left, look at that, it's $148. Why would you buy it on the secondary market when you can buy it from the Pokemon Center for the exact same price, or even a couple dollars cheaper in some instances? So for me, I think that as soon as Lost Origin flips to sold out, I think that this card, with the PSA 10 gem rate being so low, I think this card is an absolute stunner, and this is my number 2 favorite card in the whole Sword and Shield era, right? I love the Moonbreon just like everybody else. Yes, I'm a follower when it comes to that, but this is one of my favorite cards as well, and it's been on the list 4 months in a row, so everybody is obviously all in on this Giratina. Now, coming in at number 2, nothing gets me more excited than when in a sea of ultra-modern cards, ultra-modern big chase cards, we see the king, the GOAT, the legend, the one that started it all, you know, the Charizard from base set showing up here as the number 2 card that exchanged hands the most on TCG Player last month. Not only is it on here this month, it was number 2 last month. It has also had a really strong 3 to 4 month. Like, when I think about overall health of the hobby, as I said, I love seeing people buying and selling these big dollar cards. I love to see people looking at these OG cards like this Charizard right here. I just think think it's really strong, and it is really close to a one-year high. Like if you look at it, really since December of last year, it has been hanging right there, you know, in the high $300 range. So it's right there at the one-year high. And I just love to see this. Again, when I think about this, this isn't people who are just, you know, dipping a toe into the hobby. These aren't people who are just buying booster boxes and ETBs and ripping them and having fun. Like people who are going after this are legit in the hobby and they're in it to win it. So when I see this kind of excitement and this type of momentum around the Charizard base set card, I get all kinds of excited. It just gives me warm fuzzies when I think about the hobby as a whole. And then coming in at number 1. Last month, this card was number 10. This month, it is number 1. I mean, last month, the card that was number 1 flipped to off the list. And so we've just seen all kinds of shakeups here at the top spot. But this is it, right? This is the big chase card from Sword and Shield. This Moonbreon right here just seems to transcend all norms and, you know, all I don't know. It's just in a league of all its own, and it's a really cool card, right? So one of the things that I always track here is the PSA 10 population, right? So last year there was 10,074 of these in PSA 10. This month there's 10,338. So what we've seen is the number of PSA 10s that are new into the market every single month is declining significantly. If you look at that number from 5, 6, 7 months ago, right? We were adding 4, 5, 6, sometimes we were adding 700 new PSA 10s. But when you look at the booster box price there in the lower left-hand corner, the booster box has been absolutely going crazy in price. So what are you or I going to do? Are you going to hold on to that booster box, which is now up to $563, or are you going to rip it in that 1 in a million chance, it feels like, of pulling the Moonbreon, right? Most people are going to go ahead and keep those booster boxes sealed. Most people are going to be keeping a lot of their Evolving Skies products sealed because all the sealed Evolving Skies products are going nuts. So what that means is that we will see less and less of these coming into the hobby in PSA 10 holders because there's just not going to be that many to submit. So doesn't mean that we won't see more. We absolutely will, but this is one of those cards that just has the kind of momentum behind it. Like this is the big dog from the Sword and Shield era. So even if we continue to see this get into the $11,000, $12,000 population further down the road, I think it is still going to support a very, very big price point on it because it's just the card, right? Now, the next thing that I was going to show you guys, and this is the bonus content, is I'm going to show you this exact slide from 1 year ago because I thought it was really, really cool. 1 year ago, the Moonbreon here was number 1 on the list and its price was $548. So 1 year ago, the raw card price on this was only $20 less than it is today. But look at that booster box price. The booster box price 1 year ago was $363, which is $200 less, almost to the penny, than it is today. How incredible is that? When we talk about sealed versus singles cards, like this is it, right? This is a prime example of the biggest and the baddest chase card in the entire Sword and Shield era. Yet over the course of a year, guess what? The singles card has gone up $20 in value and the booster box has gone up $200 in value. So I'm going to be doing some additional videos. Some of it's going to be some sealed product that I think is flying on the radar. Some of it's going to be some cards in PSA 10 holders that I think are flying under the radar. And we're going to try and tie all of this together and, you know, have some ideas and have some conversations about some really cool products that might give us some opportunity for some growth in the future. So hey, listen, if you guys enjoyed this content, again, I love doing this. I love looking back at old content and making it into today. And if you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button. Questions or comments, drop them down below. And as always, if you like what you see, give us a big old thumbs up. I appreciate you more than you know. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an epic one. Talk to you soon, everybody. Bye.